My name is Lorraine Dempsey. I'm Chairperson of the Special Needs Parents Association, and I'm here today to interview Emily Logan, Ireland's first Ombudsman for Children, who was appointed by the President. Emily is answerable to the Oireachtas, but independent of government, and we're here today to find out a bit more about what her role intakes and what her office does. So Emily, what does the Ombudsman for Children do exactly?
Well, the Ombudsman for Children, I think probably most people are used to hearing me talking about children's rights. So we do three things. The first is that we're obliged to promote children's rights. The second is that we investigate complaints about public bodies affecting children. And then the third thing that we do is we look at any new law that's coming in that's going to affect children, and we give advice to government on those specific pieces of legislation to try and make sure that they're stronger.
Who can complain to your office?
It might be useful to say that most of the people who come to us at the moment are parents and sometimes extended family members. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that children can also come. So children themselves, if they had a complaint and they wanted to come to the office, they can come and complain directly to us. And most of the children and most of the parents who hear either by email is probably the most common form of hearing complaints from children.
And how old would the child need to be, or is it any age?
We can investigate any case up to the age of 18, but interestingly enough, our youngest complainant was a 4-year-old girl with a physical disability who had very strong views about her own care. So we don't use age as a means of deciding whether a child has an opinion or not. We will always try to work out with the child's parent or themselves whether they'd like to come in and talk to us.
So obviously as Ombudsman for Children, it's very important to hear the child's viewpoint on any issues concerning them.
It's very critical. In fact, it's even more important because in the law that I work to, it actually obliges me to hear the views of the child involved when we're investigating a case. Sometimes that's not always suitable for the child, or sometimes the parents won't feel it's appropriate, but certainly that facility is there. It's a very critical part of the work that we do.
What kind of complaints would your office deal with?
In the main, because we're dealing with children up to the age of 18, in terms of the themes that we hear about, health and education are the biggest, and that's not a surprise if you're dealing with children. But what we do is we investigate if an organisation followed its own policies and if the child was affected badly by the decision that was made. And what that means is for every public body, if you take something like a school, they will have policies or guidelines that they're expected to adhere to. And what we will do in the course of an investigation is look to see if they've adhered to those policies. And the important bit for us is to see, was the child badly affected by a decision, or sometimes a decision that wasn't made, because for some parents it's not just the action, but it's a long period of time where there's been no action.
And is there any timeline with regarding complaints with parents? If time has passed since the incident occurred or the complaint, would you say that there's too much time passed, or does it really matter if it was 6 months ago and they're only bringing it to your attention now?
No, the legislation that I operate to allows me to look at any action by a public body within 2 years of when it happened. So that's quite a long time, because other offices just have 1 year, but because obviously we're working with children, it's important that you give a little bit longer time. So it's 2 years. So if an action has taken place and a parent isn't happy, they can come to us within that time frame.
But what about the new remit that's coming into play with, for example, bodies like the NCSE, the National Council for Special Education?
Well, on the 30th of April, we will be allowed to look at another 182 public bodies, one of which is the NCSE. But what we're not allowed to do is look at anything that happened before the 30th of April. So it will only be actions or decisions that have been made after the 30th of April in 2013.
So if a parent had a complaint about something that happened in the past few weeks or over the past 12 months, that wouldn't fall under the new remit?
Unfortunately, it wouldn't fall under the new remit.
How can someone make a complaint to your office?
Well, the first way is to call our free phone number, which is 1800 2020 40. If you think of vision, 2020 vision, so it's 2020-40. Then often parents send us emails, and our email address for complaints is OCO, so it's shortened Ombudsman for Children, OCO@oco.ie. And then of course you're welcome to write in. And sometimes what happens is people might like to call first to see if they should pursue a complaint. So they're welcome to do that. They're welcome to ring our free phone number to talk to our staff before they decide to write in.
How can a person, a parent or a child, if they have additional needs like hearing or they speak a foreign language, can you accommodate their needs?
We can, of course. I mean, our job is to try our level best to remove any kind of barrier for anybody who needs our help. So what we tend to do is we ask other organisations who may be advocacy organisations or organisations that can help with sign language, or we encourage anybody, whether it's a child or an adult, who might like to bring somebody into the office with them if they need support or if they need help to do that. But it would be very helpful if you can let us know what kind of help you need, and we'll do our level best to try and accommodate that.
When should somebody make a complaint to you?
Well, I think it's useful for people to understand that the Ombudsman for Children's Office is a mechanism of last resort. So in the first instance, we encourage people to go to the public body who made the decision or who are responsible for the decision. If I give you an example of a school, because we get lots of complaints about schools, we would encourage people to go to the principal. If they're not happy, to go to the Board of Management. And really they don't need to come to us until they've been through that process, and if they're dissatisfied at that stage, then they would come to us. So we'd really encourage parents to consider trying to sort things out locally first before coming to the Ombudsman for Children's Office.
So in the case of schools, parents should look at their own school handbook that they would have been given out and follow the school's complaints procedures first.
That's right.
Before coming to you with a complaint.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And why is that important to follow local procedures first?
Well, I think when you're dealing with children, what's really important is timeliness, and we want the best result for children as quickly as you possibly can. So in the first instance, if you can get the public body, say for instance it's a school, if you can get them to sort it out locally, that's really a much better result for the child and the family than going through many, many months of trying to investigate something. So we're always trying to encourage a family and trying to encourage a public body to talk to each other to see if they can sort it out as quickly as possible.
So where there might be a communication breakdown between the school or the body and the parent, that you would just encourage them to go back and follow the local procedures first?
We do. We encourage people to follow the local procedures, and sometimes it's about the relationship breaking down. So we try to encourage the schools to maybe get a third person who hasn't been involved. If sometimes it's a personality and people aren't, the conflict arises because people now don't see eye to eye. It can be very helpful to have another person who's not been involved, who may be working in the school but just hasn't been involved in the complaint, to assist them in trying to resolve the matter.
So they can have maybe a local mediator, a friend, family member, or maybe a professional involved with the child.
Yes, I would really encourage that, because I think it's better, I really think it's better for the child and the family to do that as a first port of call.
What should somebody expect when they first contact your office?
Well, there are different levels of the progression of a complaint. And in the first instance, what we try to do is to assist the complainant in figuring out whether it's something that's within our remit. So lots of people come to us, but not everything is something that we can investigate. So that's the first stage, is trying to help the complainant to see if it's something that's within our remit. The second thing I suppose, for people to understand is that as Ombudsman for Children, I cannot take on cases on behalf of a family, so we don't represent the child or the family. My job is like any other ombudsman. I'm there to look impartially at the complaint, so I'm looking at both sides. I'm looking at the child and the family, and I'm looking at the public body side. So when a parent comes to us with a complaint, we always have to put it to the public body to see what their response, to hear their side, and then to decide whether it's something that we should investigate. But we can't take on those cases on behalf of children. And also, again, I'd encourage parents to think, is this something that could be sorted out quickly and locally, rather than entering into an investigation?
So what happens if a case does go towards an investigation?
What happens with an investigation is there's a senior investigator allocated to the case, so the family will be dealing with the same person throughout the process. And at the initial stage we look at two things. The first is whether the child has been, what's described in the legislation as adversely affected. So has there been a bad effect on the child of the action taken by the public body? And the second thing is a list of what's called maladministration, and that's how they've administered something. And there's a list of 8 different criteria for that. And for us to investigate something, a complaint has to meet that threshold. The investigation then can take a number of months. It's a lengthy enough process because we have to very carefully look at a very in-depth way at the way the public body carried out their work. The investigator will communicate with the family who've made the complaint, and at the very end of the investigation we will produce what's called a statement or a report on the investigation, where we will write out our findings, what we found in the investigation, and then what the outcome of it is. And the outcome will either be we have found that the public body did act in a way that wasn't good for the child, or we might find that the public body didn't act in a way that affected the child. And we make recommendations. If there's been a bad effect on the child, we say these are the recommendations as Ombudsman for Children I'm making to try and improve things for children. And those recommendations are put to the public body, and to date we've had a lot of cooperation with people accepting our recommendations as an office.
Where can parents and children find out more information about the Ombudsman for Children?
If people would like more information, there are a number of sources. The first is our website, which is OCO.ie, and there's lots of information there. If you don't have access to the internet, you can go to citizen information centres, and there's lots of information at those centres. And likewise, you can also ring again if people are uncertain and they don't have time to do either of those things. They're also welcome to ring the office on our free phone number, which is 1800 20 20 40.